Musing While Boozing.
Here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I know.
In the words of Ric Flair, woo! Brand new podcast. That's right. Today's the wrestling podcast. But we'll get into that in a second. Today's podcast is brought to you by our featured sponsor, Brazen Hall Brewery. Again, we love the team at Brazen Hall. They supply us with the supplies we need to keep going, but more importantly, they're purveyors of a great time. If you're in the Winnipeg area, you have to check out the brew pub Brazen Hall. These guys are on point, pouring some amazing, all house-made beers, great food, great promotional events. You got to get on it. If you want the details on where to find them and what they're doing, check out brazenhall.ca. When you go there, tell them Musing While Boozing sent you. Say hi to Jeremy, the brewmaster for us, and overall, you're going to have an amazing time. In addition, our podcast today is brought to you by Studio and Studio.com. Talked about them last week. These are the guys that make the headphones that we use here on the show. So if you're looking for brand new headphones, if yours are a little ratty, a little old, and you want something that not only looks great, but feels amazing, and most importantly sounds incredible, check out the lineup at Studio.com. Here in the studio, we actually run the Studio Regent. If you check out these Regent, they're over-the-ear black headphones. They're our premium on-ear model. They have impeccable clarity in the instrumental tones and well-balanced sound. They have 24 hours of active battery life and 20 days of standby life. The Regent is the perfect companion for you at home or on the go. It will connect to any device that is Bluetooth, but if you're like me and you want actually that cord connected, there's an auxiliary cord included. You can personalize them, their look, there's interchangeable covers, all sorts of designs, but, honestly, they sound amazing, and they are available at the fraction of the price of high-end headphones. And we're going to help you out even more. If you go to Studio.com, pick out your favorite pair, and then at the checkout, enter the promo code BOOZING, what you're going to find is you're getting an additional 15% off. And you're like, hey, these things are coming from Europe. Don't worry, we got you covered. There is free worldwide shipping as well. So 15% off, free shipping to your house. They show up in about 5 to 6 days. These things are awesome. You will not be disappointed. You got our Musing While Boozing guarantee. So check out Studio.com. Today's episode, what can I say? We actually had wrestling superstar, wrestling promoter, WWF alumni, hotshot Danny Duggan here on the show. The guy is running his own wrestling promotion here out of Winnipeg, grassroots. You have to check them out. All the information can be found at cwecanada.net. That's Canada Wrestling... sorry, I was joking there. Go to cwe.net. You can check out Canada Wrestling Elite. These guys are incredible. They're doing it old school, grassroots, out there, hitting the road, putting on amazing shows, and proving once again that if you have a great product, people will come out and watch. And Danny came on our show. He was jacked. The guy was 220 pounds of pure energy. He gave us the ins and outs of wrestling, what it's like to actually get a taste of the big time, who he's worked with, some of his favorite wrestlers, what's going on in the future, and what's it like to be involved in a grassroots wrestling organization. You could really feel the passion from the guy and how... You understand, a lot of these guys that get involved in wrestling, they seem to be in it for well past what you would think would be physically able, and it's because of the passion and the drive they have for their sport, and I have no shame calling it a sport. So sit back, relax, listen for the bell, enjoy it. It's everything you wanted to know about wrestling. Danny was an amazing guest. We hope to have him on again.
Musing While Boozing, because the best thinking happens while drinking. Hot topics over cold drinks.
Cheers.
Here we go.
Back again. Hey everybody, brand new episode, and again, amazing guest today. needs no introduction, but I'll introduce himself. Thanks for on the show tonight, buddy. How's it going?
Good. I am the man with arms of steel and ass with sex appeal. I am jacked. I am fanny packed. I am hotshot Danny Duggan.
He wasn't kidding. He was fanny packed.
Yeah.
First thing Mike noticed when I walked in, but Danny comes to us through a friend of the show, Bill Haddon's on the contact information. We were thrilled. We were looking for someone to... we had a lot of scientists and authors and stuff lately, and I thought, not... Go the other direction. So,
We need somebody who is not intelligent to join us on the program that we can sound smarter than.
Someone more like us. We spent a lot of time listening to really smart people talk going, that's
interesting.
fucking amazing.
After 15 years of professional wrestling, I do not have many brain cells left in my head, so I'm on the level with you guys today. We're okay.
Oh, and my wife would love to be here because she's a vision therapist. There's a lot of like post-concussion head injury guys or whatever. So
Oh, wow.
she'd be sitting here analyzing your ass the whole goddamn
geez.
I would love that. I probably need it. It should probably make my life make sense to me.
Danny, thanks so much for coming on the show today. And yes, as he did mention, claim to fame and what we knew of him before he showed on the show, and we'll learn a little more tonight, was the wrestling piece. And I know something Mike and I grew up interested in. I've always been fascinated with the whole entertainment industry as a whole. Not so much the wrestling piece, but just I love a spectacle. And so I wanted to have you on today and talk a little bit about your history in it. Maybe we can hit on a couple of high points, some interesting stories. Your buddy threw you into the road and sent us a whole bunch of questions for you to ask today.
Oh, dear.
So,
Oh, geez. He's been thinking about this for a while.
yeah, he was pretty excited.
So this might be an interrogation, is what you're saying.
Well, it's pretty light, but so do you still wrestle professionally now, or?
Oh yeah,
okay.
Oh yeah. I'm busier than I've ever been.
Yeah.
I've been professionally wrestling for 15 years now. I travel across Canada, the United States. I've made multiple trips to Japan.
Excellent.
And then on top of that, I run a touring organization out of Winnipeg called Canadian Wrestling's Elite, and we tour across 5 provinces right now. And we started it here in Winnipeg in 2009. We just celebrated our 9th anniversary.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And that's it. You're saying when you're saying touring, you initially thought, well, you're also doing to go, not to see, but that's to do with the wrestling. That's like you're putting on the shows, right?
Yeah, that's me wearing many hats. It's me wearing the promoter hat and the writing hat and the wrestling hat. And we just finished one up a couple weeks ago. And these tours are long and they're vigorous. We did 21 shows in 21 days.
Fantastic.
We have another one coming up in May where we're doing 25 days straight, and we're just continuously expanding further west and further east with every one.
So where did you recently just go? Bill was saying you were just on the road.
Yeah, we just we do Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, BC, and northwestern Ontario. Okay. So we start in Winnipeg, and we'll do some of the surrounding towns that are close as our base, and then we'll head out and do like Yorkton, Saskatchewan, Melfort, Prince Albert, Saskatoon. Get to Edmonton, shoot down to Red Deer, Golden, BC,
right.
Calgary, Medicine Hat, and then we start making our way back.
It's like the heart of the country, all the
and then
the big small towns, so to speak.
That's right. Yeah. And then you get to Regina, Musing, and Brandon, and then we get back to Winnipeg where we started about 3 weeks prior. We do Winnipeg, and then we keep on going east, and then we end up in Thunder Bay, which was always the end point for us for a long time, which was exhausting because it's a 7-hour drive the night after a big show in Winnipeg. It's usually one of the biggest on our tour. But now we've added Sault Ste. Marie, which is another 7 hours the next day. So
Jesus.
If you survive the 3 weeks, you will not survive the last 2 days because it's tough, especially in the winter. There's nothing worse than getting up on no sleep and getting into a vehicle at minus 40 when your body's beat up. Like it's hell on earth. It literally could not be any worse in hell than it is.
So how many guys are on the tour then? Like in terms of you travel with?
Generally speaking, there's about 12 or so that are like the core base, and they're on the entire thing. And then each province has professional wrestling in it. So we kind of pick the cream of the crop, so to speak, from each area, and then fill up the card that way.
Nice, cool. And so it's all just. I was wondering, was there a bus? I was really excited there.
Man,
not
bus,
yet.
Hopefully one day. No, but bus would be a luxury. I pulled up in my 2004 Monte Carlo. We'll cram 5 of us big boys in there, and my car's like bottoming out on the highway with all the weight in it, and we're going town to town. It really is like the clown car coming to town when you see all the guys unload when we get there.
Well, I would expect with you guys, you probably can't go further west because with all that weight in the car, you'd never make it up the hill.
Well, we're starting. We just last year branched out to BC. We held our first event there in Golden, which was right on the border. Now in May we're going to Vernon. So we have a lot of requests, and that's the cool thing about the internet now is it really can expand your brand very quickly if people are behind what you're doing. And the request for us to get out to the Vancouver area has been absolutely insane. But it's just a matter of being a small company. You gotta be calculated with those risks that you take, and that's an extra 6-7 hours. So we're now going to Vernon, and then we're going to try to find Kelowna, and then hopefully there'll be a couple other towns along the way, and then we'll hit
Bite your
Vancouver.
way there, right?
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
Because those towns are very crucial to the success of your business. Because when you start having to do those long drives between, your expenses are way through the roof. So if you can find some successful stops along the way, it makes all the difference for us financially.
Do you find the crowds in these towns that you've been to so far, like PA and Moosomin and all that, are they more energetic? Are they...
Generally speaking, I would say that northern wrestling crowds are usually the most rambunctious, whether it be like northern Manitoba, northern Saskatchewan, especially when you go and start doing like the Indian reservations.
I was just going to say, there's a demographic that eats this shit up.
Oh yeah. It gets wild. But the crazy thing is, like, I'm asked all the time, like, what is your demographic? Like, as a business owner, when I'm talking to a sponsor, like, what is your demographic? Wrestling doesn't have one.
No.
You can say there is, and you can provide me numbers, but I've been in a wrestling ring thousands of times at this point in my career. When I look out in the audience, there's people from 6 to 70 every time, male, female. Everyone can come and enjoy a professional wrestling event. You don't have to be a guy. You don't have to be a teenager. You don't have to be a young adult man. You can be a small kid, just like we all were, loving professional wrestling. And you could also be an old guy who can come and just take the weight of the world off your shoulders for 2 hours and have fun and yell at the bad guys and cheer the good guys. So
my youngest guy will turn in 7 next month. He's just finding it. He's talking about it. They're starting to emulate it at school. It's reminding me of 35 years ago, going, oh my God. And it's so funny how he's eating up just the way we did. Of course, the names may change, but the moves are the same. And he's jacked. So I was thinking, I think it's going to drag him out to one of your events. I want to bring him out and say, hey, this is what it's like live. And because he loves all live events. And something like this would just blow Ryland's mind. He would be just...
And you make a good point with that, and that's what I tell people all the time. Like, whether you're a wrestling fan or not, if you come to a live event, you will be a fan that night. Oh, yeah. You may not watch wrestling ever again, but if it comes to your town, you might consider it, because there's no other form of entertainment like it. When you're sitting in the front row and 10 feet in front of you got that guy jaw-jacking with you back and forth, and then he flies in front of you, and you see the guys hitting each other, because that's a big misperception of wrestling. Oh, they're not touching each other. It's all, when you see us actually wind up and clock each other, and you're like, holy shit, he just hit him.
I've seen some of the local events they held in Portage. Well, in the high school, we did a couple fundraiser stuff, and so I was working the lights and stuff. So I watched a couple, and I mean, I'm appreciative. Like, I'm a huge sports fan across the board. I don't really care. I can follow loosely the storyline still in the WWE, just because it's on ESPN, right? It's totally legit. So it comes across my Twitter feed, and I'll sort of stay on top of what's going on. But yeah, as a live spectacle, it's something to translate, better live than a lot of other sports you take your kid because you don't want to spend $20 on. Hockey game, they get disinterested. But to see two monsters up there that are bigger than life, shit, he'll die. And
when a wrestling show is produced correctly, it'll bring you on a roller coaster of a ride. So you're going to see a little bit of everything. You're going to see the high-flying wrestlers. You're going to see the big monsters. You're going to see the creepy and scary characters. You're going to see the girls. You're going to see a little bit of something. So by the time that show is complete, if it's done correctly, it's going to evoke so many different emotions from you that you're going to have a good time, because you're going to emotionally invest in what you're seeing. And professional wrestlers, and of course I'm going to be biased being a professional wrestler, but I always feel we don't get enough credit for what we do, because we're athletes, we're actors, we're improv artists. You take every form of entertainment and put it in a blender. We have to provide all of it live in front of an audience with one take, and that's something even the highest paid actors in Hollywood can't do. No. I've worked on movies, I've worked on TV shows, and it's very tedious to me, because you have to sit there and do the same shot over and over until you get it right.
I've heard the description that the wrestling is the closest analogy anybody's made is Broadway. The lights are on, and there's no backing up. That you have to stand there, and all your mistakes are right there. And you get one shot.
It's very similar to that, but even to take it a step further, and yes, there's times we have a script and we have a story to follow, but a lot of professional wrestling, and the magic of professional wrestling, is improvising with the audience and going with the flow of what they are giving you. Yeah. On Broadway, you're reading off that script, and you're not deviating from that script. We have a general outline of what we're supposed to do, but we go out there and we go, oh, maybe they want this tonight. Yeah. And we have that ability like that to go a different direction and give those people what they want. So you really, like, we talk about them being, an entertainer and being an athlete. You're a psychologist when you're out there as well, because you're playing with the psychology of people's minds and their emotions and pulling those strings. So the best people in the business, I can always tell when I'm on the road which guys are going to be good and which ones will be bad by their ability to pick up women, as silly as that sounds. Yeah. Because going and picking up a girl, generally speaking, when you're at a bar and you're bullshitting with women, is you're usually telling them what they want to hear so you can get them.
Yeah.
Professional wrestling is very much the same thing. We're looking to hear what you want to hear for that reaction, and then once we get it, we dive in and go full tilt for it. So it's very much the same thing. So if you have that ability to emotionally kind of play the puppet strings of somebody, you're going to do well when you have a full building of them.
That's amazing.
So you're definitely reading the crowd then, is what it, and you're, if they aren't wooing and making noise, you got to do something else, right?
100%. And it's crazy because I'm an old school wrestling fan, and you'll hear the old guys, especially all the legends that have been on tour with us, they solely did their matches based on what the crowd wanted. There's very little communication, but wrestling has progressed where it's very, very... it's complicated at times in terms of the sequences and the moves they're doing are very dangerous. So there has to be a lot of communication. So there's a lot of times now where wrestlers don't understand that part of the business. They treat it like Broadway, and they have a script and they follow it move for move. But no matter how good it is physically, it doesn't always connect emotionally. So the wrestlers that are very good and make a lot of money in this business are the ones that are able to read an audience and feed them what they want. I've heard analogies of guys saying, like, you can prepare them a chicken dinner, but maybe they want steak. So if you get out there and realize they want steak, you better get back in that kitchen on the spot and make them steak, or they're going to be very unsatisfied by the time you leave.
Love it. So if you're running your outfit then, because I'm more fascinated with the, I don't know, called the behind the scenes piece of whatever. So now I imagine yourself being an entrepreneur and getting this off the ground, and it sounds like you're growing, and that's fantastic. Do you? Because I read about the scripting and like the bigger outfits and stuff like that. So not so much, I'm not talking scripting the matches, but like point by point. But so when you're saying there's a flow to a wrestling event, do you plan it out so that you guys are going to go first and second? You sort of try to write the sonata of the evening, so to speak, so that you're going to obviously build to a key match, but you know what I'm saying? Like
100%. And if wrestling is done correctly, that's the way it's supposed to be. Your main event is the big finale.
Right,
so you want to take the people on a ride to get there, and it's the basic concept of wrestling storytelling is no different than movies or television. You have to get people invested in the characters and take them on that ride. So you want to initially get them invested with the characters, and then bring them on that. You can start off with a big car crash scene, but you're not going to be able to do that for 2 hours.
No.
And sometimes you'll see that on a wrestling show. There's some very popular wrestling companies that will give you car crash after car crash after car crash, but once you've seen it for 20 minutes, you don't need to see it for another hour. So you can give them that big car crash, but then you got to slow it down and give them something a little bit different, pull a different emotion out of them, and then you can start to build and climb again, and then bring it down, and then ultimately it explodes at the top. Just like any movie, you watch any movie, they're all relatively structured the same. And wrestling, it's basic storytelling. It goes back hundreds of years, and wrestling's very much the same.
I find that's something that's desired now. Like, you look at all the movies, everything that happens, it's all a big bang, special effects, but there's no plot, there's no climax, there's no just kind of just a little lump, little hill. People want that. They don't even know what they want. That's the worst event.
So you dropped on there like some of the classic. I mean, to let our listeners know, who are some of the classic wrestlers that some people may know in terms that you have worked with in the past?
Oh wow!
Because I mean, from what I hear, it's more than just a couple. So
yeah, dozens. Well, the tour we just finished up a couple weeks ago was headlined by Jake the Snake Roberts, and that was hands down the most successful tour we've ever ran in the history.
I think Bill showed me the picture of you picking up the airport.
That was my buddy.
I was actually with him when that came across.
So I've worked with Jake quite a bit. I've done tours with him out in Newfoundland and worked with him on TV out in Portland. So that's why we finally were able to make it work to get him out here, because he was such an iconic star in the 80s.
I remember him.
Because I think we're both the same age. I mean, what year were you born?
87.
Oh, Jesus Christ! Never mind. I know you're way younger. Because we were.
But yeah, that would have been
we were 12 when he was. Like I saw him in Winnipeg at the old Winnipeg barn.
British Bulldogs.
I'm gonna say 86.
Oh wow!
So
that's when he started there.
Yeah, like it was right when it was peaking and stuff. When the
original Undertaker. The original Undertaker, which was still freakier than most of the.
I remember seeing them on Saturday night's main event. and then like 3 months later seeing him here in Winnipeg.
Yeah, and he's such a memorable character that in 2018 he was still selling out buildings across the country for us. And I don't think Jake gets enough credit for how big of a star he was, but he's somebody that transcended professional wrestling. He's right up there with guys like Hulk Hogan and Macho Man Randy Savage. You don't have to be a wrestling fan to know who Jake the Snake Roberts is. Yep. You've never had to watch the program. You've heard of Jake the Snake and you've heard of him slithering a snake on guys. Like he's somebody that has just transcended wrestling and has gone on to be lifeless in terms of his star power.
Yeah, and not to dive inside of somebody's jersey, but how's he doing now? Because obviously he was a subject of the documentary and stuff like that.
He's doing great.
Yeah.
Like when I first worked with Jake, I want to say it was maybe 4 years ago, the first time I did a tour with him, he was just getting clean. And he was great. And this tour, he was fine. I think he has a very dark sense of humor, very much like I do. So to some people, he could probably be perceived as kind of being an asshole at times. But that's just like I am an asshole, but I get perceived for that reason as well. Just my sense of humor can sometimes be taken the wrong way. To his credit, he really busted his ass in the sense that he's got to be 60 years old now.
Yeah.
He's made a lot of money in wrestling. He did not have to come on the road in Canada in the middle of winter for 21 days. You know, if he would have said, I'm going home after a week, I would have understood because my body hurt after a week. Like I was falling apart. He stuck it out and, you know, you could tell he was maybe getting a little cranky as the tour went on and he wasn't getting to sleep because as the headliner, he's got to get up earlier than everybody. Me and him got to get up earlier than everybody because we got to go do the radio stations and the TV, all that stuff. So, you know, the young guys, like, they're the ones in the ring putting in the work, but they get to go to sleep for 8 to 10 hours most nights. Jake is doing the event, and he's signing autographs for an hour before, and then he's signing them for another hour at the intermission, and then he has to go to an after party and make an appearance for the sponsor, and then he's got to go to his hotel, get 4 hours of sleep, and then he's got to get up and do it again. And for him to do that for 3 weeks, I thought was a real testament to his character and his professionalism. Because
we were just talking before you got here about both him and I have been like crazy overtime, whatever, as of late, and I'm like, and we're not doing the physical activity that would go like our bodies are getting no mistreat whatsoever, and after like 6 days, I'm like, this is not killing me.
Oh yeah.
So obviously he keeps doing
15 years older than we are.
But he must do a lot of this then. He must continually do a lot of this.
Well, I saw recent pictures of him. He looks great now.
Yeah, he's still booked up full time as a headlining act, but he definitely doesn't go on the road for as long as we did because we're the only company in North America that does these tours. Like WWE now, I think only does like 3 days on, 4 off or something, or 4 on, 3 off. You know, granted, we only do it 3 or 4 times a year and fill it in between. Nobody's going for that long because it is tough, but it's a necessity. Just being a part of the Canadian economy and just how expensive it is to fly somebody here. If you just brought Jake Roberts for one show, you couldn't do it, and that's why for a long time there wasn't big wrestling stars coming here. You might get it once or twice a year. So it was kind of a necessity that we got on the road and started touring because now, you know, overall, if you're bringing in a guy for, you know, 10 shows instead of 1, his rate's going to come down a little bit per night because you're giving him bulk work, and then you also, you know, that flight that's costing you $600, $700, $800 is now split up instead of trying to bank it on one. And then, you know, I travel in the U.S. so much, and it's insane to me the cost of gas up here. You start hauling, you know, 3-4 cars around and a big truck with a ring trailer. Your gas costs are through the roof, so you have to be on the road that long just to get to your break-even point.
And you're not getting money to last like 25% of your shows. Right?
Yeah, like it's absolutely crazy, and he toughed it out, and he did really good, and that's, you know, obviously we get beat up in the ring with what we do, and that's, you know, you hear of all these wrestlers and people, you know, not in the know can sometimes be ignorant to it, and they can kind of mock wrestlers like, oh, wrestlers, you know, oh, they're drug addicts and they're alcoholics and this and that, and not to justify anyone's behavior, but there's a reason for it because it's a very, very hard life to live when you're getting the shit kicked out of you on a nightly basis, getting next to no sleep, and then you have to cram on a small plane seat or in a small car and then do it all again. There comes a point where you physically and mentally can't do it on your own, and that's why some guys will turn to that, because if you don't get to that level, if you don't tough it out and make it happen somehow, someone else is going to take that spot and make that money. So it becomes it's a very dark business, and I think that's all forms of entertainment. But there's a reason that these things happen, and you know, the travel is one of the big ones. Like just, you know, being a big guy and then physically going in the ring and beating the shit out of your body where you're getting slammed. You know, yes, there's padding in the ring, but it's, you know, this is what's underneath that padding, and it hurts. So to be taking the abuse a guy like Jake did for 365 days a year, just beating the hell out of his body, and then having to get in a vehicle, at 6'4", and then having to like slouch and like that.
Uncomfortable,
The travel as a wrestler will kill you faster than the wrestling, because it's just not ideal to be beat up and then be crammed with your back aching and all bent over and slouch your knees, and that's what gets a lot of guys. And I remember when we first started doing these tours, and I'd contact some of the older guys, and they'd say, "How long are the drives?" And I would tell them, there's some guys that'd be like, "Sorry, I can't do it." And as a young guy, like being in Canada, that's something as a Canadian wrestler you learn very quickly. You learn you have to drive, because everything's so spread out. If you want to work, you have to drive. In the U.S.,
Did you grow up here in Winnipeg?
Yeah.
It's good. We had this conversation. I've had it many times where Winnipeg versus growing up in Toronto. Like, you grew up here, we grew up in Portage Prairie. So yeah, I'm dating a girl in Dauphin, right?
Yeah.
Shout out to Cheryl, hey honey. And so you drive 2 hours. Like, your concept of where you need to drive to get places is a lot broader. And then you talk to people that grew up like in these urban environments, and they just don't. And so it's triple that when you go to the States and you grew up in Chicago, you go to Chicago. If you want to where you're flying.
Yeah.
Like the concept of driving for 5 hours in a straight line doesn't exist.
Oh, exactly. And they have it really good there. And it's usually an eye-opener for the American wrestlers when they come up here, because you say Chicago, you could hit 10 major city centers within 5 hours.
Yeah, or even it's technically the same city, but 3 hours away. It's a whole, their neighborhood is a city.
You drive 5 hours from here, you hit Regina.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's nothing going on in Regina. So that's where, you learn that appreciation is that you have to get in the car and drive. And a lot of these older wrestlers would be like, nope, I'm not doing it. And when I was young, I was on the road, and we'd go to Edmonton almost every second week, it seemed, which was like a 12-hour drive, and just the worst looking back on it. And when these old guys would be like, I'm not doing that drive, I'm like, you fucking pussy. We're in the wrestling business. You have to drive. But now 15 years later of getting the shit kicked out of me, I'm in the car for 5 hours, and I'm like, please, we got to get there. I got to stop and walk for a half hour, just because it hurts so much, and you're in such discomfort and such pain. But that comes with being a Canadian wrestler and just being in the area we're in. It's either that or you stay here and do nothing. And then once again, it goes back to what we just talked about with flights being expensive, especially if you're a young wrestler on the rise. You're not getting a $600 plane ticket bought for you when you have no TV value yet or any name value to you. So you're either driving that, I remember my first big tour of the U.S., I sat on a bus for 48 hours to Boston. And, many trips like that, 24 hours to Maine or 30 hours to Florida, because it's either that or you sit at home and do nothing. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with a guy named Kenny Omega, big star, probably the best wrestler in the world right now. And even him, before he got his big break in Japan, he was working for a company called Ring of Honor, which was the second or third biggest company in the world. And Kenny was well on his way to becoming the best wrestler in the world. And even they had to stop using him because the flight from Winnipeg was so much. So being from Winnipeg is a severe disadvantage in the grand scheme of what we do.
I fly a lot for work, and I actually flew back beside Jericho when we're flying back from Minneapolis. They just had an event. They're coming up to Winnipeg.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and so we sat down. And again, I've always been fascinated with the wrestling business. So, and I'm not shy. So I looked at him, knew exactly who I was, sat down, I'll take 2 beers, gave him one return, said, hey, I'm Carl from Winnipeg. Hey, buddy. And we yapped. And it was the quickest flight of my life.
Oh, cool.
So I've always been fascinated with the business, just in terms of how. So he was telling me about how he got it. Did someone mentor you, or how did you get into it? At what point did you go from how partying the bar to hey, I'm going to be a wrestler, or was it something?
Remember in grade 12 they had the book of jobs. The book of jobs.
So which counselor pointed you to?
I remember looking at being a wrestler, and I was like, oh, right on. And then I'm like, they had a list.
We're 5'10".
I don't think they have that same book anymore.
Pounds, so.
Well, I've always been fascinated with wrestling. My earliest memories as a person on this planet are wrestling. 3 years old watching WWF. And, my parents would call it an obsession from the day I started watching it. It was wrestling and nothing else. I didn't want to be a firefighter.
So you didn't fall into it accidentally. This is something that was on your docket from day one.
Yeah, I was born in 87, so if I was 2 or 3 years old, that's the height of Hulkamania. That's probably why my dad was watching it, because everyone was watching it. He wasn't necessarily a big wrestling fan, but it was a cool thing to do.
See, I was growing up with my grandfather, was AWA. And so he would take me to the events from Winnipeg.
I forgot about those days.
Baron Von Raschke. That's what,
we just had him here last year.
I know, I remember seeing posters. Because I grew up, one of the first things I did at 3 years old was give people a claw. That's my formative memories of sitting there with the rabbit ears, watching with my grandfather on Sunday afternoons, watching the AWA.
Oh, everybody knew the claw. saw, whether you were.
Well, again, it's funny how quickly wrestling can transcend into. It's always been into the popular media and culture, and you don't know shit about shit. But the vernacular will hit you, the moves will hit you. Who knows what a body slam is? I mean, it doesn't end. Yeah. Sorry, even to catch up. So you were saying you were A1 prime wrestling from day one.
Everything was wrestling. Like even as 5-6 years old, I would get together all the kids in the neighborhood, and I would write up matches, and we'd have little shows. Like promoting and booking wrestling was always something I did, and. When I was 12 years old, I was watching a WCW rerun. It was on Saturday at 12 o'clock on CKY. Yeah. And this was 1999. And a local wrestling company called River City Wrestling put up an ad advertising their wrestling school in Winnipeg. And, this is 12 in the afternoon. I'm watching, oh my God, there's wrestling in Winnipeg? Yeah. Wrote down the number as quick as I could. Knew my parents probably wouldn't let me call it, so I waited till around midnight when they were in bed. snuck the phone downstairs, and I called the promoter, and I told him I wanted to be a professional wrestler, and for some reason he answered at 12. Now, being in the business, I understand. We're all up at this hour.
Yeah. You're just winding down.
And I guess he was, he had a keen enough ear to maybe gather that I was a little bit younger, and asked how old I was, and I told him 12, and he kind of chuckled and said, well, you're a little too young to wrestle, but I appreciate your enthusiasm. If we're doing shows at Chalmers Community Club every 2 weeks. If you want to come and help sell programs or carry the ring jackets to the locker room, come on down. So that was my introduction to wrestling, and I started doing that at 12 years old, and just helping out at every wrestling show I could. My parents would drop me off, probably just happy to get me the heck out of the house and consume me with wrestling. And by the time I was 13, 14, it was a much different local industry, and this probably would never happen now. But I started to referee at 13, 14 years old, and I'd do little trips. I remember one of my first road trips was to Portage la Prairie. We did Minnedosa, Portage la Prairie, the first weekend at 14. And I was refereeing on those shows. And then before the shows, like when I first started wrestling, I went on to do full training classes later on. But with this company, I would just train, I would just get in the ring and wrestle with the guys before the shows. So they would teach me little bits here and there. And when I was 15, it was January 8, 2003, I showed up to referee like I was every Wednesday at that point. And one of the guys didn't show up, and they needed someone to fill in. And I already had my boots ordered and my tights ready for the call. And my buddy, who's one of my best friends now, actually, he has been since that day, drove me home. I picked up my gear and came back, and I had my first match at 15 years old, and I haven't stopped since.
That's awesome. That's I want to know what the story was, because that's incredible. I love when people dial in on something, and then there's very few people that this is it. In too many professions, you fall in ass backwards, and sometimes it turns out amazing. But that's really cool.
Yeah, and I try to tell people, and every situation is different, but I feel like I'm truly blessed, regardless of it being times in my career where I was struggling and barely getting by and could barely eat, to doing very well and being comfortable. The financial success of my career was never a factor into the happiness of my mind, because I was always doing what I love doing. And that saying, if you do something you love, you never work a day in your life, it really rings true. And I try to give that advice to anybody who's not happy in their situation. Like, when you get up in the morning, you have to look forward to your day. If you're getting up and you're hating what you're doing on any level, you got to change it. I know it's tough to take that plunge and take risks, but you have to. You only got so many years on this planet.
That's what I tell people. There's nothing stopping you. You have to breathe when you wake up. You have to get up. But what you do after that, let's be honest, it's your choice. I mean, we've all made some, well, except for you, had the same fucking job forever. you make changes. You change your wife, change your life, change your house, change your whatever. But if you're not happy, I'm always proud that people stand up and say, no, fuck it, this isn't, because you're so true, especially as you get a little older and you realize, there's a finite time that you got time to play in the sandbox. And to spend years.
Well, the fact that you realized that earlier than most, that's awesome.
Young, 87. My God, we were in fucking grade 7 at 87.
But I say wrestling's like dog years. For every year you've been wrestling, you put on 7 years of life.
and also, I think your body takes 7 years of work. So obviously you look like you're in fantastic shape now.
On the outside, the inside hurts.
Well, yeah. I can't imagine, because I know what I feel like, and I'm not wrestling. longevity. I know when they make it big, they wrestle forever, right? But in terms of how long do you expect?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. What do you see in the future? Like,
because I mean,
10 more years.
I always say what I think, and again, if you're not headlining on TV and stuff, I don't. Is there a prolonged career for the guys that get passed into 35, 40, 45 for wrestling?
Maybe not 10 years ago, but now there is.
Yeah.
When I first started wrestling, WWE just bought out WCW. ECW went out of business.
Yeah.
International business was kind of slow. WWE was the only show in town, so it's either you make it to WWE or you do nothing.
Yeah.
And it's drastically changed in the last couple of years where wrestling's kind of got a cool buzz about it again. People are watching it again. And due to social media and the internet, you can brand yourself to be a star without the WWE machine behind you. Even just me being here in Winnipeg, it's unheard of for someone from Winnipeg to keep as busy of a schedule as I do all over the place. And I'm able to go to Tennessee. I'm able to go to Boston. I'm able to go to Portland. People know who I am.
How many events did you do last year?
150. And that's
like every fucking 2.5 days.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. Nice. And it's because if you're proactive and you kind of have your finger on the pulse of social media and branding yourself, you can generate awareness and create your own brand value.
Anybody can be a corporation now, especially with social media, Instagram and stuff. I mean, well, shit, this was a joke. This whole podcast was literally 25 episodes ago was literally a joke, and now with a couple of thousand people, I was like, okay, well, this is. Anybody can be anything if you put the time, effort, and you have something that people are interested in.
That's just it. You have to be willing to put in the work.
Yeah, I mean, when we grew up and you wanted to be interested in wrestling, you got one TV show a week, and especially in the very early days, and there was one magazine, and that was it. There was no news, no rumors. Your local newspapers didn't carry shit because it wasn't real news.
Yes.
One channel. Now you can, with YouTube, you can fucking dive in. And, I've watched some of the Japanese matches and stuff because I am interested in the athletics behind it, right? And seeing what goes on over there and reading about some of the people that have gone and made a career. They never made it big here, but it was just making a well. Because so you've been to Japan. You said you've done some tours in there.
Yeah.
My understanding is they
seem gracious.
Love
100%.
Yeah.
And that's just a big part of their culture. It's a very very different life out there, and they're just very respectful, polite people, and they treat wrestlers like athletes. They treat them with respect.
Yeah.
So it's a unique environment when you go to shows because they are watching respectfully. Where in Canada and the US we're used to them just going wild and crazy, and that's fine too. That's just a different. That's just the Western culture. But if you do a good enough job getting yourself out there, you can go to places like Japan and people know who you are. I don't want to say it's leveled the playing field, social media, because obviously WWE is the show and they've got billions of eyes on them.
Right.
But you can still carve enough of a niche for yourself where you can stay busy and stay booked, and you can generate revenue for yourself by merchandising and doing that online and doing that at live events. If you go out and put in the work and treat it like a business, it will pay back like a business.
Yeah.
And sometimes wrestlers will get into the business thinking, it's wrestling, this is going to be fun, and they treat it as such. And yes, it is fun, and that's why we do what we do.
But if you're gonna treat it like a hobby, it's going to pay you like a hobby.
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
It's got to be a business.
100%.
Hey everyone. You're listening to this podcast, you might even be listening to using some headphones.
You might need some.
Yeah.
Old, used, tattered, dead battery.
Well, if you need new headphones, here at Musing While Boozing, we're here to hook you up. Please check out the cutting edge company Studio at www.studio.com, and you will see an amazing lineup of products. Yeah, we're rocking them here in the studio. These things look great, but more importantly, they sound even better. They're incredibly reasonably priced, and you know what? With the price, we can help you out.
Oh yeah, we got a promo code for you.
Yeah, go to studio.com, pick out whatever you like, and then upon checkout, type in the word musing for the promo code, and you'll get 15% off and worldwide free shipping. These things show up from Europe to your house in 5 days, and you will not be disappointed. That's studio.com, promo code boozing.
Boozing.
Check it out.
Cheers!
Yeah, no, it's I was listening to a different podcast, obviously someone smarter than us, but they were talking about it had to do with comedians, but it had to do with being an independent entertainer, and talking about the fact that in the world, if you can find anywhere between 3,000 and 4,000 true fans that'll, if you're in your city, they'll come pay, they'll buy your merch, they'll do whatever, that you can make a living, and anything beyond that is where you get gravy.
Definitely.
It doesn't be in today's world. You take 3,000 or 4,000 true fans worldwide, you can make a living. Now, you're not going to be rich, no, but I mean, and beyond that, it's not that many people when you think about it. Like, that's not...
Not really. Not nowadays.
No, but if you can find 4,000 people that when you come in, oh, fuck yeah, I'm putting down the $40, I'm going to come see and do whatever, and buy posts for my kid and go home, that'll pay the bills.
It's funny, I remember when WWF came here back in the old Winnipeg Jet, what was that? The old barn there. The old barn there on downtown there.
Yeah.
And that's still the most memorable. I won't forget that. No. And I was way up in the fucking stands, right? That little shit $50 seat, and I won't forget it. Like it was awesome.
Yep.
And so if you can get that, it's amazing. It really is. Like.
Yeah, I'm really. It's my son is jacked. It's so funny because we're talking even before when you were going to come. I was talking with my wife saying, "Yeah, I'm going to take him because he went to a wrestling birthday party about a month ago, and the kid was a little older than him, and then suddenly he came back just jacked." So, I'll let him know that I was actually with a real wrestler tonight. It was crazy.
Yeah, it's contagious. You get out there with your friends and you have fun. The bug will bite you.
Well, that's what Ric Flair said in a podcast too. Is that it becomes an addiction. Mm-hmm. Because somebody was really sort of playing the question they were trying to get to is, well, why do people keep wrestling? Especially for you guys at that level that don't need the money.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, you're putting your goddamn body through a meat grinder.
Oh, yeah.
And in a roundabout conversation, long story boring, he talked his way through the fact that it's like anything else, between the endorphin rush and the popular rush, that it's an addiction. It truly is to get out there. That the only time with all the problems he's had in his life with, I think one of his kids committed suicide, and was the fact that the only time he feels at peace is when he's inside that ring. And, he feels that this is where I belong. He knows what life is supposed to be. There's nothing. He's in control of what happens in those inside those four walls, so to speak.
It's a really cool feeling to be standing in the middle of a building with all eyes on you and being able to control how those people react with what you do. And that's why a lot of guys have a hard time stepping away from it. And when you get to live that life, and it's a fun life, it can be tough sometimes and obviously painful, but it's a very fun life when you love what you do in wrestling. So it's tough, and that's why guys will wrestle for so long, because even just thinking about it now, if I were to stop wrestling tomorrow, I know I'd be miserable going to the same job every day, clocking in and doing the same task over and over. That would be very hard for me to do, having been blessed with the opportunities I have been. So that's why guys will hang on as long as they can. Like even on this last tour, 3 days before it started, I tore my pectoral muscle in my bicep, and I had to take a few days off to go meet with a surgeon, but as soon as I was back, I was wrestling even though I shouldn't have been, because the buildings were full, we were sold out, and they were loud and they were having fun, and I didn't want to sit on the sidelines. So to my own detriment, I got in and possibly made it worse by doing it, because you want to feel that rush, you want to go out there and perform.
Crazy. So, I mean, obviously your life is quite busy because you're running a promotion. So, but how often, talk to me a little about the training side. I'm talking like the physical training side. So, how often do you train a week? How long? Just what does that look like in terms of keeping your body in shape to the ability to be able to do this crazy, do you have a special, and do you follow it? I got a million questions. Do you get a structured diet? Is this all just internally that you just sort of figure out works for you, or do you get help in that respect in terms of I'm talking just purely from the physical upkeep? Because we'll take some pictures, folks, for the listeners, and we'll post them on the notes. The guy looks like he's ripped here, so I just want to know how you keep that going, because I know what it's like to try and maintain any sort of regime when you're traveling. And
it can definitely be tough. In terms of the gym, I'm in the gym 5-6 days a week. In terms of actual in-ring training, once you've been doing it long enough, you don't spend as much time in the ring training because your body's beat up. You don't want to go and waste bumps in front of anybody or nobody. But even in just the last 5 years, just with the world being more health conscious than it was before, it's a lot easier to eat healthy on the road. Sometimes if it's 2 a.m, you're in the middle of nowhere, you're going to have to eat shit. Yeah. But realistically, you can go to a restaurant, you can get salad, you can get chicken breast, you can get eggs. So if you want to eat healthy, the options are there for you. It's up to you if you want to do it or not. Yeah. So it's not as tough. Dieting is it's calories in to energy out. So if you're putting in the work in the gym and you're putting in the work in the ring, you can get away with a little bit of being lax. But at the same time, we're performing in our underwear in front of groups of people. So you kind of want to be mindful of that. And it just really depends on what you're training for. Like there's times, because I love bodybuilding and I love weightlifting, so there are times I'm going to bulk up. And
like, do you do something, if you know tours coming up, do you change the regime up in terms of what you're doing? Because I have friends that are into like the amateur, not bodybuilding, but the hell where they're just trying to the fitness competition stuff. So do you think of like, okay, I got to lean out for the tour, so to speak, or get back into quote unquote game shape, or is that something you just
well, we perform all year, so you try to be in general good shape around the whole year. But if you have certain opportunities coming up, like anytime I do any WWE work, I know the cameras are going to be on me and they're going to be extra critical of the way I look, and they like a very lean look, so I'll diet down. Like the last time I was there was maybe 3-4 months ago. I usually sit at 240, 250. I cut down to 220 because I know they like abs. So I went in and shredded, and that was a lot of work. That was
tough.
A lot of cardio, and that was a lot of eating. And the funny thing about fitness and bodybuilding is usually the better you look, the unhealthier you are, because you're not eating as much food as you need to. Your energy levels are really low.
George St. Pierre was talking about that, but if you're not actually walking around weight, that's when it hurts. He feels his best when he's at his walking around weight. When he gets into cutting or show weight, which is why he didn't mind going up a little bit in weight for I guess one of his fights, but that's when it hurts, is when you got to get down to that crazy, this is what I got to be for TV, and in his case weigh-ins or whatever. And especially when you're doing physical sport or physical contact, when you dry yourself out like that, your muscles hurt, they ache. When you're taking slams and falls, you have no padding in them because you're so depleted, so it's rough. And it's crazy. Like when I started wrestling, I was 140 pounds, and I got up to over 250 at my biggest, and I feel my best when I'm 240, 250. I'm eating lots of food. I'm lifting more weight. I'm lifting heavy weights, and I overall feel good about my body. But it's funny the way society has warped people's perception of what health is, because I could be 250, bulking, my arms bigger than ever, my chest jacked, my legs huge, but you'll have a little bit of a belly from powerlifting and eating to get that big, and people will perceive, oh, he's fat, he's out of shape. But then you cut down to 220, where you're shredded, lean, you can see veins. But you don't feel great.
But you feel terrible. You're tired all the time. You have no energy whatsoever.
Your body's screaming for more, and it's not there, right?
Yeah, and more so than the physical aspect, you're mentally going crazy. Like, there's nothing worse than just absolutely starving and wanting to eat something good, and you can't because you got to stay on track. So it's so crazy the extremes you have to go to as an athlete, or in general, to keep this look of health that's expected of you. So
you're saying a couple months ago you did some WWE work then, in terms of, like, how does that look like if you're not under because you're not under contract with them for a prolonged period of time? So from the business side, they just clutch and grab people in for drop-ins? Is that how that works? Or,
I've been doing it since 2010, I think was the first time I did extra work. It's called extra work. It's the same thing as when you work as an extra on a movie. So when they do Raw and SmackDown, they do it every week, and they're in a different part of the country. They usually book 6 to 8 local wrestlers.
I had no idea. That's really cool.
So we're pretty much on standby in case they need extras. If they need either bodies for matches for their guys to work with on TV, if they need you for backstage segments.
Because they get their jobbers this week. That's right. If someone goes down, there's an ACL or whatever, we need someone to fill these tights. That's awesome.
And sometimes you do absolutely nothing, and you get paid to sit there and eat food. But usually it's on the Tuesdays before SmackDown. You'll usually get a match in front of the agents, and you get to show them your stuff, and then they give you some feedback, and then you can take that and work on it. And like one of the times I did it led to me getting a 3-day tryout at their performance center in Orlando. That was almost 2 Februarys ago now. So if you show them something and they see something in you, they'll take a further look at you. One time I got to wrestle Jack Swagger prior to SmackDown going live, which was really cool to be in the ring with 5,000 people in the building in a WWE ring, because that's what you always kind of grow up and aspire to do. So just even though it wasn't televised, it was on a WWE show in a WWE arena.
People are still there. You're still getting the same energy. You don't get energy from TV cameras. You may know they're there, but they're not yelling at you. You're
walking down that ramp and you're getting in the WWE ring, and that was really cool. Last year, it probably would have been about a year ago this February, I got to do a cool spot with Braun Strowman and Roman Reigns where Roman Reigns speared Braun Strowman, and I was the security guard behind him. We went flying through the guardrail and smashed it, and that was a really cool clip that went viral. 3-4 million people watched. So just like really cool little things like that you just may be a face in the background. People might not know who you are, but to you get to go home and say, hey, I got to do that.
Yeah, and you're in the wrestling. Like, I mean, whatever, you're in the show. That's fantastic.
Like even the last time I was there 3 months ago, it was in Minneapolis prior to the Tables, Ladders, and Chairs pay-per-view, and I was the bump dummy for Kane. I was taking choke slams off the stage because they needed to get the right camera angle for the spot they were doing later in the night with him.
So they
Braun
do
Strowman.
that too. They use that.
Oh yeah.
You see, I was fascinated with that piece of it, and that's
so
incredible.
It was really cool. I'd take a choke slam from Kane and fly off the stage, and then I'd get back on it, and then they put it up on the big Titantron, and I'd watch it with Kane and Vince McMahon, and that's a real cool thing. As a wrestling fan, wrestler aside, as a wrestling fan, it was a super cool thing to do.
Yeah, to stand in the ring with Vince. No kidding, I'd probably want to hit him, but whatever. And then he would drop me like a ton of bricks.
Yeah, he's huge. He's a big dude.
Yeah.
That is absolutely insane. So
like diet wise, like do you you're taking any supplements? Do you take BCAA, like
everything? My girlfriend works at Popeye Supplements, and she's educated in supplements. So I've got just cupboards of shit I take.
Like, what do you find is the most effective?
I think it's probably
that's really an open-ended question because it really depends on what you're training for. Because there's stuff for stuff for getting lean, there's stuff for getting big, there's stuff for your joints, there's stuff for your skin.
Do you find it's worthwhile?
100%. Yeah. It's everything works in moderation, and if you use it correctly, it's going to pay dividends to you.
Yeah. I've in the past I've taken some but as soon as I stop taking it, of course the mass goes away, and it's like so I've always been questionable whether to.
Never had mass. I don't have that.
I'm a tiny guy, right? Like,
well, you got to remember it's a supplement. It's supplementing your body, so you take that supplement away, you're taking away the benefits.
Yeah.
But a lot of times too, when people are running these cycles of supplements, once they get off of them, they usually slip up on their training and they're eating a little bit because they're not getting that extra pump from the supplements.
Yeah.
So once you're doing that and you're not getting the help from them, you're going to have a quicker decline than if you're doing that behavior while you were on them.
Yeah.
So that's what happens with a lot of guys. Like, and I'm guilty of it too. Like when I dieted down for that WWE gig back in 3 months, it had to be 3 months. I dieted down to 220, and I think I did about 5 or 6 weeks, and I dropped 25 pounds. And the first 2 weeks were just miserable because you're used to eating what you want, or eating comfortably. You're still eating healthy, but you'll have a burger if you want it.
Yeah.
And when
the carbs disappeared, and you're just there's only some ways you can cook chicken, so to speak. And
chicken's the worst. I hate it. I have a whole tub of it in my fridge that I've just been avoiding. But after the first week, 2 weeks, if you tough it out, you eventually get into the mental routine of doing it, and then you can tough it out, knowing you have a goal. But the second I was done, like, it was eat, and that's where it can be dangerous because your body's so used to, or it gets used to this routine of only be given so much and not being given any of the bad stuff, and then you just overload on it, and that happens with a lot of bodybuilders too.
Yeah. The body's resilient, right? Like,
they'll train and cut up for a show, and then you'll see them a week later, and you're like, what the fuck happened? And they're just ballooned up, water retention and just food because they've had no sodium, they've had nothing in their diet for so long, and then they just overload their body with it because they finally have some freedom, and that can be more dangerous than anything.
We used to do that for unrelated, but judo competitions. So the night before, you don't eat, you don't drink anything, you just nothing to drop you down that 2-3 pounds into the lower class.
See, that's just absolutely crazy to me. That like you're gonna put your body through such pain and suffering before you have to compete at a high level.
Yeah,
that's what I always thought.
That's just awful.
Like, now you're dependent on youth and like as you get older, it's that you can't handle that. Like,
So you dropped a couple names, but who is, in terms of, from the technical side, who do you think today is the best tactical wrestler out there, or the one that who would you like to do a match with?
Oh man, best technical wrestler.
If I could make a phone call and say, I've got you booked next Saturday, And so either technical or just, I'm really curious, who would you want to, if it was announcing, Danny versus who?
I'm really jealous of Kenny Omega because he got to work with Chris Jericho, and he was somebody I always looked up to, just him being another Winnipeg guy that was able to get out there and do it, because growing up as a wrestling fan, there was plenty of wrestlers from Toronto and there's plenty of wrestlers from Calgary, but there was none from Winnipeg. So you always kind of looked up to Chris Jericho as the guy. Yeah. If he can do it, I can do it too. And I remember growing up as a kid, he was always billed in the Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazines as 225 pounds. So that was like always my goal. I was like, he's 225 pounds. I have to at least be that big. I don't care if he's
2 inches taller or shorter.
Yeah.
I get that.
And I hit it for the first time like 3 years ago. And I was like, finally, after all these years, I got there. I'm on the right track. So I think it'd probably be him, just because, he was always kind of used, put on a pedestal and used as motivation.
Have you ever met him? Or?
Oh, plenty of times.
I was going to say, because you got to come from Winnipeg.
Yeah, and I think even one of those Raws where I was an extra, I think I did a security segment with him and Kevin Owens where we were pulling them off of people and got pulled over. So got to work with them a little bit.
I always thought those refs look a little jacked. The security, they guys like just ripped. I'm like, now I understand. They're you guys that called up and are the just in case.
Yep. Like the last time we were there, my buddy Darren Corbin from Minneapolis, like he was an extra as like a paramedic. So when like Kurt Angle got knocked down, he had to go down there and pretend to be a doctor, check him out. Just trying to look like as normal as possible and out of place. And wrestling's fun that way.
How about as a kid? Who was your idol?
Mr. Perfect.
Mr. Perfect?
Yeah, I love Mr. Perfect.
See, I was Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. I got to meet him in Winnipeg.
Yeah?
And just because I grew up fascinated with like ninja movies and stuff like that. So when Gigi was my grandfather, took me into Winnipeg, and we came in to see the event. And then we hung around, and I didn't get his autograph, but we did get to see. There was no pictures back then. There was no phone, so Gigi didn't have a fucking camera. But I just take his hand and say hi or whatever. And we had like a very brief conversation. But the fact that he looked like a ninja to me, right?
Yeah.
Like the kid, because this was right when he was just cut before he got hurt.
He was in crazy shape.
Oh yeah, there was his body must have been screaming because there wasn't an ounce of fat on him.
Yeah.
But to stand there and just look at this monster. I'm like probably 11 at the time, 10, 11. It was incredible to stand there and say, and he was my wrestling. I remember watching him. I remember when he almost died on Saturday nights in there, and
Macho Man crushed his throat.
Almost broke his trachea, and then to bring in the ambulance, I'm going.
He was actually the headliner of our convention last year, the first one we did.
That's crazy.
Yeah, him and Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard were our headlining guest. He's a really cool dude.
Yeah, well, he wouldn't know it from holding ground, but I mean, he was the guy that I just, if he was on, I had to watch. If I heard he was wrestling, I had to look it up.
I was taken in by the Macho Man. I was taken in by the glitz.
Well, those two guys had incredible matches together.
Yeah, well, they did.
Some still consider the WrestleMania 3 match one of the best of all time.
Well, and it's one thing I like about the Cody box, Mike, is I've been showing Dylan, who's my oldest son, and Rylan, my youngest. I've been pulling up because I have so many fond memories of that Saturday night's main event, because when that was on, that's when we were in grades, 5, 6, 7, prime wrestling time, right? And so I remember staying up and setting the VHS tape and then watching some and have to go to bed and get up the next morning on Sunday and watching the rest of the show. And some of the fights they were in there, and it's so funny, Mike, watching some of these matches, and I hadn't seen them in 30 years. Like when Hillbilly Jim was fighting the other guys that were just like him, whatever. There was these redneck fights. It was crazy. It was hilarious. I'm reliving my childhood. The guys that are watching this, I'm like, and I remember the announcers. I remember what Mean Gene was going to say next. And like, I haven't seen this in 30 years.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because I started watching them too. Then I'm like, we just make fun. Oh, it's just choreographed. It's just. I'm like, that guy is getting hit by a 2x4. It's not choreographed or not. That hurts.
I got over that really quick. I didn't really care about
It's real, right? Like it's
a fake thing. I was just amazed by the spectacle. For me, I've always just been like, wow, you put a show like in front of me, I'm all in.
And I'm right there with you. A lot of people are like, oh, you must be into UFC. I can't stand UFC.
Yeah.
Like, it does nothing for me. I tried to get into it because, my
See,
friends
I'm to the spectacle, so don't get me wrong. I like that too.
Yeah. But why don't you do that? Or like regular wrestling. I'm like, I love pro wrestling for the spectacle. I love the crazy characters. I love the stories. It's not the act, the technique and the form of what they're doing is a part of the package. But I'm not watching professional wrestling to watch good quality wrestling. I'm watching to watch these wild, crazy characters interact with each other. And if they can wrestle and put on great matches too, that's even better. But that's not the driving sticking point for me.
So someone like you has been in business for a while then, do you go out of your way, or, an old dog, new tricks type thing? But, because I think one of the rebirths of wrestling now, and I mean, from someone who's on the outside, way outside, casually glancing is the best I can say, but with some of the new moves and stuff they can do, and just the way they're pushing the athletics, do you go out of your way to learn, is Danny going to have a new finishing move by the end of the year, so to speak, or do you, because you say you don't, now that you're sort of going, you don't do a lot of, as much in ring training, so do you sort of develop your repertoire and you perfect that, or
give or take? But we all, I think all of us still watch tapes and study and look for new things to try. Realistically, it's all very similar to another. It's just a different twist or turn, or you post your body this way, or it's not that hard to come up or take something differently. There is a little bit more pressure in 2018 for high risk maneuvers and more dangerous maneuvers than there's ever been before.
That's where I was going, because some of the stuff you see now is just insane.
I'm really, if I'm being 100% honest and truthful, I am fearful for a lot of the guys in the business and my friends, and even myself, on what our bodies are going to be like in 10 or 15 years, just because of the physical demand that's expected on us. The guys back in the 80s, they were wrestling way more and had way more longevity. And they were wrestling 10 times.
Throw some guys in the rope and throw the arm bar, and you're done. That leg drop of his, I don't think was too physically taxing, so to speak.
Well, he had to have a couple hip surgeries because of it, so it did add up over time. You do anything enough, it's going to add up. But wrestling, it's taken such a weird turn that I feel kind of lost sometimes, because it's not the same wrestling that I grew up on in terms of the concept or the base of what we do. It's people are trying to connect with the audience through maneuvers and athleticism opposed to storytelling. And I grew up on storytelling with wrestling. I was trained to tell a story with my wrestling. So sometimes that's lost in today's generation of wrestler, where they're trying, things can go viral, so let's try that new crazy move that looks like it could have killed somebody but actually might have. And I think that's a slippery slope, and you just see more and more every day. I see something on my feed of wrestling move gone wrong, and there's a guy jumping off a balcony, and people have died and people have been paralyzed, and it's only going to get worse. When these guys who were doing it for 20, 30, 40 years, if they're beat up and they were doing a fraction of the stuff we're doing, or putting in a small amount of impact on their body that we are now, it's going to be rough for guys in 10, 15 years. And I think we're going to start to see some of that in the next 5, 10 years, because that aggressive hybrid style really started to kind of form in the early 2000s, where they started kind of going balls to the wall with high risk and dangerous moves. So I think you're going to start seeing it in the next 5, 10, 15 years, the follow-up for it. And I think in a way you kind of have, because for a long time wrestlers would wrestle for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. Now guys wrestle for 5, 10.
That's about the question. Like what I said earlier, is because I've seen that. It's like anywhere else in society. We always distill the extreme part. We want more and more of that, and more and more of that. And you only push so many people to the edge at some point where this came up in conversation a couple of weeks ago. We were talking about the average NFL career, which is going sideways, but I think there's a correlation here. It's 3 years, because to operate at that peak, because that's the expectation we have, nobody can. I mean, there's the exceptions, but the average guy's 3 years, because running backs are a dime a dozen, because you even just twist an ankle once and you lose 1/10 of 1% of your speed, and there are now 9 guys that for the next 18 months can beat you.
Yep, 100%.
And you're out of a job.
And that's wrestling's exactly the same.
And I feel like everything that's athletics gets pushed to the point where, I mean, look at the hockey. The Jets are so good. The average age is now, you don't get that second contract anymore in the NHL. You get a big one when you're 21, 22, 28, you're looking at retirement.
And that's why a lot of wrestlers end up with the problems they have, because there is that pressure of, shit, if I sit out or tell somebody I'm hurt, somebody might take my spot. So I'm guilty of it.
Scary.
I'm guilty of, nope, I'm hurt for 2 years. I had a back that I probably should have got operated on, that I kept wrestling on, because I'm like, well, I worked 12, 13 years to get to this point where I'm booked 150 times a year. If I take 4 or 5 months off to heal, that's going to take a while to get back again.
Step up here.
So you tough it out and you keep on doing it, and it's a scary slope. And I see it every day walking. Driving my car down the street. I see an old lady or an old guy walking with a cane,
bent right over,
pushing, and I'm thinking like that person's never taken one body slam in their life.
I'm 65.
Yeah, and like I know how it is now. Like I told you earlier, like getting out of the car and getting out of bed are two things the least things I look forward to in my day, because I know it's going to be painful. Just getting out of a vehicle and stepping and standing up is going to scream pain, and so is sliding out of bed in the morning, and that's going to eventually come to a halt where it's going to be like, all right, that's enough.
So for all those promoters out there, don't worry, he's got 10, 15 amazing left.
That's the crazy thing. You would never notice. I did a show. Was it 3 weeks ago in Minneapolis, and this was fresh. So I still had my muscle tear, and my chest was still pretty bruised, and my arm was I can't lift any weight with it. Mm-hmm. And the promoter's a good friend of mine, and I told him like, hey, I'm going to be there for the show, but just a heads up, I'm a little beat up. If you can just be conscious of putting me in the ring with somebody who can protect me, I'd appreciate it, because you need somebody who's going to be safe, especially when you're hurt. And when the match was done, he came to me, he's like, are you sure you're hurt? He's like, he thought my performance was the best performance on the entire card, and it had 20 good, capable wrestlers who were at full, complete health, because you can't show that sign of weakness. You got to go in there and you got to.
That's what two good guys can do, though.
Yeah. And that's because I have been doing it long enough that I know, okay, I can't turn this way, I can't push this way, so let's work around it. And luckily I was working with good guys that were able to help me, but there is a pressure on guys to just kind of keep your mouth shut. WWE's getting a little bit better now, because there has been so many controversies and scandals and concussions and things of that nature, where as a corporation they have to take accountability. They're a publicly traded company, they can't be having guys get killed on their
liability.
So luckily it's changed, but to think that there's no backlash is ignorant, because if you are a top guy and you blow your knee out and you come back and you blow it out again, there's going to be questions of, hey, can this guy still go? Is he injury prone? Can we count on him?
Because I got 6 guys right here just chewing at the bone.
So you might still have a job, but you might not be in that position again. You might not be making that money again. So it's very common that guys will just suck it up and push through until the body eventually says no.
Crazy. So
as usual, Carl, capitalism. I am so anti-capitalism. I'm a total socialist.
So then, Danny,
what is your... where do you see yourself 10 years from now?
Wheelchair. No.
It might be a good gig.
No, yeah, man, that'd be great to have someone push you around. No, when it comes to wrestling... I think you stop for 2 reasons. It's either one, because your body tells you can't do it anymore, or 2, you stop having fun. So until one of those things happens, I'm going to keep on pushing through, and then that's always kind of been my goal. And that's I'm lucky personally that I have a wrestling organization that's doing very well. So even when I had to sit out some dates on the last tour, I was still very hands-on involved with the creative process and the producing of the event. So I don't see myself leaving wrestling as a whole, ever. But if I were, it'd be a long time. Like I would have to hit a point where for whatever reason I just was not enjoying it and needed a break. And and that might happen. It's nice to think like, hey, I'm going to do this forever. But at the same time, I do see changes in the business that are starting to represent an industry that I don't necessarily agree with at times. So there might come a point where it evolves so much from like, this isn't even what I got involved in the first place. So time will tell.
What would you tell the next 12-year-old kid who's listening to this podcast today, and so hopefully you're not 12 listening to this podcast.
Yes. It's more what would you tell the next 40-year-old? Is he good to go?
Well, we do have a student in our wrestling school who's 41, actually. He's doing well. He wants to be the oldest wrestler to come out of our camp, and he'll do it. He's refereeing for us, and he picked that up really quick, so I think he's going to do it. His body's going to hate him for it, but he's doing it.
Well, I wanted to get there both because I want to ask about this, sort of that leads to the next question in terms of it's sort of combined. Do you guys run your own school, Winnipeg? Because I mean, if you were interested in wrestling, I was going to lead to how Winnipeg. Where do you go? Like, what is out there? And I was hoping you had something to promote.
Well, AJ Sanchez, who's a guy I've mentioned a few times on the podcast, he kind of heads up the Elite Wrestling Academy. So when people contact me to train to be a wrestler, I send them to him.
Okay.
He works hand in hand with another organization in town as well. We kind of join forces and try to have it all under one roof, because for a long time it was tough to keep a school going just because wrestling wasn't in pop culture, it wasn't mainstream, so it wasn't cool to be a wrestler. But it's cool to be a wrestler again, so you have a lot of people that want to try it. So we've got the school up, and I believe he trains 2 days a week right now, and we're currently in talks with another facility to set us up full time so we can do 5-6 days a week like you properly need to be trained, and like how I was trained. So we're working on it and making it, and there's a lot of interest. I think he's got like 7 or 8 students right now, which is crazy, because for a long time you couldn't even keep 2 or 3, which is usually a good indicator that wrestling's doing good.
That's fantastic. Like for me, when I was thinking wrestling, back to the gym days, you had that headgear, the weird mouth guard, you're grabbing each other, it just. But that's what I mean. Like that in my day. Now that was many years ago, decades. But that's what wrestling was, right? And I don't think it's that way anymore, right? Like that stigma is no longer.
No. And that's why wrestling, I think, suffered for a while, because there was kind of that gray area that people knew it was a show, but wrestling was still very protective of itself and said, no, it's not. I think wrestling is popular and hitting that peak again because we are so open and honest about our industry. So people what we do is still fascinating, whether you know the inner workings or not. So people don't feel stupid going to a wrestling show. You know, we all had those friends growing up, like, oh, why do you watch wrestling? It's stupid and fake.
Well, I think changing that federation entertainment, as much as it was a fucking copyright issue, it makes a big difference. I think the fact that it's World Wrestling Entertainment, it's truly. I think that once they just swallowed that pride, if it took it, that I don't know if that was.
That wasn't even swallowing pride. They just swallowed it to avoid wrestling commission taxes. They swallowed that pride to save millions of dollars. They were smart.
I think that made a big difference, because once they really embraced the entertainment side of the business, of course they've had some years where it was, all with the chicks and it was all just sex, whatever, and then came back down, and then it was all just cruiserweights and came back. Like, it's been fluctuating here and there, but as they sort of found their way again, I think that's been the big thing is...
The industry as a whole is just more open about what it is, and now the casual person can go to a wrestling show and not feel dumb about it. Like, yes, we know it's a show. Let's go and enjoy it for what it is. Let's go and enjoy it like we would a movie. Let's go and enjoy it for a TV show.
Why not? It's the same thing.
It's exactly
watch Transformers blow up on screen or watch guys blow up in the ring. It's the same thing.
You still have, that asshole be like, oh, that fake bullshit.
Take my money.
Yeah, like, you just come enjoy it for what it's supposed to be, and you'll have fun. Because I can tell you right now, like, regardless if you know or think it's real or fake, if you're watching real professionals do what they do, they're going to make you question yourself, regardless of how much you think you know when you're there. They'll make you go, fuck, he really hit that guy, or he must not like him. Like, those two don't like the guys that know what they're doing.
That didn't look like it was like scheduled.
And don't get me wrong, especially on the independent level, when you've got all levels of experience and ability, you'll see some stuff that's shit sometimes. You're like, oh my god, that's fake, that's crap. They're not even trying to hit each other. But then there's guys that are so good at what they do.
Like, a miss is a miss. And it's no different. A miss is no different than a missed pass in sports. As I'm concerned, there's a play, it didn't go off, you can see it. Fucking Truba gives the puck away, it's no different than if it's like this far off, and I get it. And you can, so the guys that are really good, they'll make you question, like, shit, like, I think because they're really touching each other. I mean, you hear the smacks.
And the funny thing is, like, there are guys that will hit you for real, and it'll hurt a lot, but it'll look like they didn't, and that's the worst. There's nothing worse than getting fucking drilled, and you're like, oh, that was terrible. But the real professionals are the ones that could make it look like they killed you and they didn't even touch you. But it's funny you mentioned that, because on a sidebar, I always laugh at that wrestling fan that's in the audience, like, oh, you missed, or you fucked up. And I'm thinking, like, how many punches does a boxer miss in a fight?
That's my take on it. Nothing you watch is perfect.
No, but wrestling, for some reason, is designed that way, where everything has to look flawless.
I know, if I got in and I was pissing and I started throwing punches, I remember my fights as a kid, I was missing a lot of punches. And no one was saying, it's like, this is gay.
You do it in wrestling, man. This is bullshit.
This is bullshit. No, that's insane. I'm thrilled to have you on, and that's just I've always been impressed. I think, people, that whole fake thing was pissing me off, because that floor is real, those chairs are real, those tacks are real, the blood is real, it's real. I don't care how it got there, it's real.
I don't know why it mattered back then. It certainly doesn't matter.
I think a part of it was because the industry said, no, this is real, and we're like, we know it's not.
No,
and it's so funny to me, because you'll listen to the old timers, like, back in the day, brother, they knew it was real. No, they knew it was bullshit. It defied.
My grandfather did not. He was 50 55, 6 years old. He did not think it was real. He just enjoyed the spectacle.
Like, it defies logic the second you grab a guy and you throw him towards a set of ropes and he turns his body and bounces off of them. That does not happen.
A 5-year-old would grab the rope and stop.
Exactly. You know, the second that happens, you've told the audience we're working together.
Yeah.
You know, but in the confines of the environment of professional wrestling, it makes sense. Yeah. And if you enjoy it for that, you'll have a good time.
I'd be pissed off if you didn't come off the ropes because damn it, you're supposed to fly off. Like in my head.
Well, as a kid, I would remember we a basement like this. You'd wrestle with your friends. You'd throw them towards the fake ropes, and you'd bounce back off the wall. And you knew as a kid, even though you didn't know if it was real or fake, you knew that when you threw a guy towards the ropes, that you had to come back
and get his takens.
I fucking thought. See, I was naive. I thought you used the ropes to fucking give a power punch.
I loved you, man. It was so awesome. Unless you want to cover anything else you want to promote, or you got any dates coming up or anything like that?
Well, I think this airs before our big event on Saturday. But just
Saturday the what? Sorry,
the 24th.
Oh yeah, be before then. Oh, 24th of.
That's like 4 days from now.
Oh yeah, no, this will be after.
Well, just to give people a little heads up on the things we're doing right now. This is a big event. We're doing the Legends of Wrestling. Legend of Wrestling and Professional Sports Convention 2. We have wrestlers from WWE, the AWA, UFC, NHL, and CFL. The likes of Ron Simmons, Farouk, Barry Windham.
Is this your second year?
Second year.
I remember reading about the first year.
Yeah.
I read the press release on, because when you said the CFL, I remember how they were combining this group of people.
That's right.
Yeah, that's what I knew us. The second year.
You know, you talked about the AWA earlier, Jumpin' Jim Brunzell.
Yes.
We have Greg the Hammer Valentine, Tito Santana, Tugboat.
You are going right down my Hall of Fame list.
Yeah, like they're all going to be here on Saturday. And that's just kind of
Where is it on Saturday?
Canada in Garden City.
Okay.
So we're doing a convention where you can come and meet we have James West from the Bombers coming from the 80s, NHL players. You can come and meet them. They're doing convention during the day, 10 to 6.
I'll get you to shoot an email and we'll tweet it out.
That'd be great.
This weekend. Today, tomorrow, whatever. I'll send it out.
Yeah, 10 to 6. You can come and get autographs, photo opportunities with the legends. They're doing Q&A sessions throughout the day. And then from 7 to 9, we're doing a live event where they're all appearing as well. So most of them are retired but making cameo appearances. Myself, personally, I'll be teaming with Tito Santana to wrestle AJ Sanchez and Greg the Hammer Valentine.
Oh my God.
So if you're a wrestling fan in Winnipeg, we got lots of stuff like that going on. Like we just finished a tour with Jake Roberts, like we mentioned. By the time this comes out, it will have been announced, so follow us on social media and you'll see it. We're doing a 25-show tour in May. We'll have another Hall of Famer headlining that. If you're a wrestling fan, it's a go-to destination because we're bringing you wrestling from every generation. We're bringing you the legends that you grew up on, and then we're bringing you the future stars that are going on to be future Hall of Famers. So if you're a wrestling fan, it's the place to be. CWE on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at CWE Canada. Myself personally, Hotshot Danny Duggan on all those mediums as well.
Send me the links, Danny. We'll put them on the notes. That's fantastic. We'll tweet it out.
Shout out to you, Dwayne. Sorry, you missed it.
Oh, one of our biggest fans on this show is he's in California.
Okay.
And he hits everything down there. He goes to everything. So he'll be jacked to have you on here today. So
cool.
Cheers, man. Thanks for coming out today.
Thank you, guys.
One of my favorite episodes. Thanks, guys. Everybody else there, keep musing while boozing.
This has been an MK Cast production.
Here's what I'm thinking. Here's what I know. I'm thinking if I take another drink of whiskey, I'm gonna wake up on the floor. Here's what I'm thinking. And here's what I know. I'm thinking it's a damn good day when you're drunk by noon and passed out by 4. free.